SuperTalk Mississippi media production.
MidDays with Gerard Gibert is on the air. MidDays with Gerard Gibert is powered by C-Spire. Power your home or business with C-Spire Fiber. To learn more, visit supertalk.fm/C-Spire. C-Spire Fiber powers SuperTalk Mississippi. Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. You're listening to MidDays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to MidDays, SuperTalk Mississippi. I'm your host, Gerard Gibert, along with a Rhino in the Element Wealth Studio, guiding you through the middle of your day with facts, fodder, and fine music. All right, what's going on today, Rhino? Because it is cold, and my wife just texted me. We live in Ridgeland, of course, and this is trash pickup at my house, and she just texted me and said, I feel so sorry for the guys working the trash trucks, especially the one that hangs off the back. You know he's got to be freezing. So God bless them and thank them and everyone who worked over the weekend, especially first responders, linemen for the utility companies. My gosh, what a mess. What are you seeing in here?
Mainly the northern part of the Magnolia State being blanketed under an inch or more of ice. And central Mississippi, for the most part, dodging a bullet. Yeah, I would agree. Wasn't as bad, as severe as we thought. But, you know, when you track the forecast, the line, I guess, separating kind of the bad stuff from the not so, really the freezing rain, sleet, ice from the just precipitation and freezing rain, that kept moving, kind of draped diagonally across the state from the southwest to the northeast. And so it would go a little south of our position here, go a little north, and ended up we got the freezing rain right on time, as was predicted, honestly, from about 7 o'clock yesterday morning until about noonish, 11 o'clock or so. And then this morning when I got up, opened the curtains, snow flurries were falling here. Yeah, it's been flurrying off and on seemingly whenever a cloud passes over. And I'm not a meteorologist. I'm just spitballing here. But it feels like the weatherman's not predicting any precipitation, and it's just really cold. It almost feels like those flurries are just the humidity freezing in the air and falling. Yeah. Yeah, because when you look at the radar, it's like, okay, where's that coming from? Right? So, well, we do have a meteorologist coming on in the next segment, right? That'll give us an update from the National Weather Service. And then at 11:05, we've got Commissioner Sean Tindell from Mississippi's Department of Public Safety. He'll give us an update, of course, on the various activities at the department, but also talk about how the Mississippi State Troopers and the Department of Safety, how they're assisting our fellow Mississippians that are desperately in need. I saw that Commissioner Andy Gibson, Rhino, announced yesterday at some time that his department has directed the armory, the old armory on the fairgrounds. Of course, the Department of Agriculture and Commerce manages the fairgrounds. They're going to be collecting supplies to take north to our fellow Mississippians that are in need. They were asking for water, non-perishable food items, soups and so forth, can openers to open the soup, makes sense, and then just the basic paper goods. I'm going to head to the grocery store after the show today and pick up a bunch of stuff and take it down there. I just feel like that's what else can we do? We can't restore the power, and that's desperately needed. But hopefully these folks can get the trucks up there and help those in need. Did I see this right, that
our good friends in Tippah County. You see this, Rhino? Expected to go without power for potentially weeks. That's what the Tippah Electric Power Association says, just because of the devastation. I'm not certainly condemning the Tippah Electric Power Association. I think just the devastation is catastrophic levels. You don't snap a finger and restore that sort of power, especially if you got long lines, right, of transmission between the substations and the power source to the addresses. That complicates things even further because in those situations, you've often got multiple breaks, transformers, and then I worry about the supply of transformers is a supply chain issue because you can't ship stuff, right? So you got to believe that they've got a certain number on hand for these situations, but probably not enough to handle this level outage. So we pray for them. If you've seen probably, folks, Oxford, man, it really got it. The photos and videos I've seen floating around of Oxford are just mind-boggling. I'm not talking about just the university, but Highway 6, 7, the areas around. Incredible. Just totally incredible. Looks like a lot of the roads are fully impassable. Did you lose power at your place?
I had blinked once, and I was like, that was weird, and then it came right back, and that was it.
We had about half a dozen of those little flickers, and then finally about 2:30 yesterday. You know, you can tell it's not a flicker. It's a kind of a gradual shutdown. But many thanks to Entergy, who services our area here. About 6:30 last night, it was restored. So, you know, I got to point this out, Rhino. You and I talk about this. Because of this wonderful technology that we have, and once again, the data centers that power it, you can't ignore that. Being able to go online, and first, when the power company tells you before you've told them you got an outage, well, that's a function of technology, and that's a good thing. And then, secondly, a convenient link to track that with maps that clearly show who's got power, who doesn't. And I looked at my area, and there are little graphical representations on the map of where the outages are, spots that show this is where we've detected the source of the outage. And so the one I looked at that I believe serviced my neighborhood, you know, you can click on that, and it'll present a little screen that shows when that outage occurred and how many addresses are affected. And this one said 721 that I believe affected my area. And there's a street that connects Livingston Road in Madison to Highland Colony Parkway, those of you that are familiar with it. It's called Steed Road that services my neighborhood. Well, it's a old two-lane road, and the trees are just right on the edge of the road. It's also where I've had the deer strikes as a result. But aerial power, right, lines through there, bunch of trees. I mean, that's a recipe. And so when I left the house yesterday afternoon, the roads were passable. There was a Ridgeland police officer that was parked straddled across Steed Road so that you couldn't travel to the north, essentially. And when I came back, they had moved. I said, well, I'm curious because I knew my power was out. See if maybe there's a problem they're working on down there. They'd moved about 200 yards further up the road. And then I could see another police vehicle about that same distance sort of separating them, but had the road blocked off, which made sense. And so I suspect that's where the power. But look, my problem with 4 or 5 hours is nothing compared to these people that are still out, right? So we're going to talk to the National Weather Service. And, of course, this is making national news. I want to say that maybe we're second to Tennessee or Texas, I believe, in terms of the number of addresses without power. I mean, it's incredible.
Yeah, as of the last count, which was 5 minutes ago, it's 160,315 Mississippi households without power.
Wow. That is a bunch. And, of course, you saw it on the roads this morning. You see the utility trucks traveling about, going to the various sites where they can assist in restoring power. But, gosh, they're hampered by the trees all over the place. So you got to get the trees out of there and make some room that they can access those spots. And then, you hope they got all the supplies and the tools and the replacement parts and transformers and so forth to make the proper repairs. But I don't know. Is this worse than 94? That's one everybody keeps referencing. Is this worse? About the same in terms of the number out and so forth? I don't know. Hadn't researched that. Hadn't contrasted it, but it's pretty bad. Of course, the schools all over the place shutting down. I saw where Oxford schools scheduled to be out for the entire week. Also, I know that I guess a lot of folks aren't able to tune into us on the air this morning, right? Because the storm got lots of our stations. Please pass the word if you're tuning into us on the air that you can still get us on the app, right? I don't think there's any disruption to that. So, get our app. The SuperTalk app is available, and, of course, on the full-size browser as well. All right, we're taking a break, just getting started here. We got the National Weather Service up next.
The best mate.
This segment of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by Covington County Hospital in Collins, where your health matters.
Now back to Middays with Gerard here on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth Studio. All right, let's bring in Nicholas Fenner, meteorologist with the National Weather Service, to give us an update on this wintry weather that swept across the Magnolia State over the weekend. Nicholas, thanks for joining us.
Hey, good morning. Hopefully everybody's warm this morning.
Man, oh man, it's really something. Rhino and I were just, he was actually doing a little research on the big 94 storm. That's kind of the reference point everybody uses with respect to winter weather in Mississippi. And it appears that there were more power outages in 94. I'm not sure the storm was any more severe, but what exactly happened here to cause this severely cold weather and all the wintry precipitation?
So we had a pretty strong Arctic air mass come down out of Canada just a few days ago, and when those systems move into northern parts of the country, the cold air's got to go somewhere, race down this way, and unfortunately met up with a lot of moisture coming out of the southwest, off the Pacific and off the Gulf to interact and give us a bunch of the sleet and freezing rain across the state. Yeah,
but I think what's so impressive about this one is it wasn't restricted to just limited to just a small area, right? I mean, numerous states and a couple 100 million people, I think, latest report I saw, were affected by this storm.
I would believe it, yes. The system was kind of slow moving as it took its time moving from the southwest across the southeastern United States. And there were sleet and snow accumulations over in Texas, and then the ice really got going as it came across Louisiana into the Tennessee Valley.
It's just unusual, of course, when the deep south here gets hit that hard. And, of course, it's typically not, the less devastating snow that we get here. It's the dang ice and the freezing rain and the sleet, which, of course, affects the trees, and that takes down the power lines, and the trees fall. And it also makes the roads with the black ice virtually impassable. And it appears that's exactly the scenario we had this weekend.
Exactly. We had, it's hard to get exact numbers, but up through a lot of our Mississippi Delta areas, it's been described to us as a war zone with the amount of tree damage and things that happen with probably upwards of an inch of ice in those areas. And then into southeast Arkansas, we had measurements of like up to 7 inches of just pure sleet on the ground, and that's been causing issues for, some structures that just can't bear the weight. So even in those cases, that can really pose a danger.
Well, you guys at the National Weather Service, of course, were warning us about this and providing a forecast, which I don't think really, I feel like from last week changed a whole lot to what actually happened. It seems like those forecasts were spot on.
We like to think so, and certainly we're humbled when it's not. But with this kind of a powerful system, we're grateful for advances in our technology that help us to see the potential for this coming, several days out.
Yeah, so what do you got in store for us in the coming week? Are we going to get a little respite?
So we do still have a little bit of cloud cover out there today. It's not quite full sunshine across the state, but we'll still warm up into the 30s and 40s in southeast Mississippi. And where we're trying to melt all of this sleet and ice in northern and central Mississippi, temperatures may struggle to get above freezing today. We'll see a little bit of melting out there just from the sunshine, but issues like ice on roads overnight could still be a problem where you see a lot of that melting going on during the daytime. And unfortunately, it's just going to still be really cold at night. Anybody that's dealing with power outages still, we have lows in the teens across the board tonight and kind of the low to mid-20s even going into this next system coming over the weekend.
Wow. So to what extent, Nicholas, do the power companies rely, and I guess collaborate more would be the word, with the National Weather Service so they can plan for these storms?
Well, like I mentioned, advances in technology and everything have helped us to really get a better picture for the kinds of events that can be coming down the road. And so they do take our forecasts and, that helps them to stage where their resources are in advance, kind of plan where they may be needed the most. So they're definitely one of our core partners in helping to make sure people are prepared and get back online as soon as possible.
Tell us about that technology a bit. I mean, some of this I know has certainly occurred since 1994. A massive amount of new technology has been introduced on the scene. If nothing else, just the connectivity and the ability to communicate amongst the agencies, between the agencies and the National Weather Service, local, state, federal operations, all in concert and able to communicate.
Exactly. We've learned from especially those kinds of storms like the ice storm of 94 or big flood and hurricane events that it really takes that interconnectedness between partners and agencies at all levels to collect extra data and to process it really well. So we've got, in the 90s maybe you might have been putting out a forecast for 2 or 3 days in advance and hoping it was right. We have a lot better ability now to see things with some accuracy going out to 7 days. And they're always tweaking models and using increased computer power. Nowadays we refer to them as the computer ensembles, but we may run an iteration of a computer model 50 times and give us an idea of the full range of possibilities.
Wow. Yeah, so as I recall, predicting of weather, one of the first applications used by the old Cray supercomputers. We've come a long way since then, but it took that kind of computing horsepower to process all this data in a meaningful way as input to the forecasters.
For sure, yes. Yeah, the ability to process that amount of data is exceptional, and that's really helped us out.
Man, incredible. All right, so what's the outlook for the rest of the winter? As I recall, this is supposed to be a La Nina year. Is that correct, where the jet stream supposedly stays a little north of us?
That typically is what you would expect. And then, of course, there's always the weather that happens in between. But, yeah, so our official, even the next month to 3 months, has us kind of on the edge of expected above normal temperatures. It just takes one cold outbreak like this to, knock us down for a week or two. But that's the official outlook, is kind of about near normal for the next month and then leaning warmer as we head into the early spring. Okay.
And a bit drier as well, right, with the jet stream staying above us, kind of carrying those storms to our north.
Exactly. Yeah, for the prevailing pattern, the moisture will be either locked up to the south or, a lot of these systems skimming northern parts of the United States.
Yeah. Well, this could actually kind of knock the averages down right during the La Nina period when you have several days of these frigid temperatures. Maybe overall, just looking at the number of days, the temperature stays above normal. But I guess if you were to average it out through that period, seems like this would drop it down.
Yes, this will definitely bring our average down for the winter.
Oh, man. Well, so how far out do you guys go in terms of forecasting just general weather patterns? Are you going beyond this winter period and on into the spring and summer?
We do have the Climate Prediction Center that looks at those kind of patterns and trends that go out into, like the summer time frame. So you mentioned La Nina. Currently there's a 75% chance of a transition to neutral conditions headed into the springtime, which doesn't really mean a lot for us, in the short term, but just kind of means we're getting back to the normal variability as we head into the spring and summer time frame.
Okay. Well, I think the thing folks would be concerned about is, are we going to get enough of a rest here so that utility companies, first responders, and everybody else, and of course the public works folks at the municipal level in particular, MEMA, can get out there and get things back to normal?
We certainly hope so. At least across the state, it doesn't look like there's much of a chance for additional rain or sleet or snow or anything in the next week. May have a little chance for some light rain or, wintry mix at the tail end of the week. But the real issue will just be if they can get enough sunshine to keep melting things, especially up in the northern part of the state.
Yeah, well, let's certainly hope so. So anything in particular you guys are doing? Do you increase your staffing, or you working overtime or beefing up your resources when we have these big events like this?
We do try, and thankfully we had a full office in here yesterday as things were unfolding, bringing in extra staffing and support through the overnight hours and just trying to get that information updated and out to everybody that needs it for these kind of events. So thankfully we did have a staff that was able to come in and help us out through this event. Yeah.
Man, oh man. Well, we appreciate all the good work from the National Weather Service keeping us informed, and you guys predicted this one. We all knew about it. It's just kind of a limit on what you can do. There's a few things you can do, but until it comes, you really don't know how to respond, but we certainly appreciate the National Weather Service. Thanks for coming on, Nicholas.
Well, we thank you, too. Have a good one.
Folks, we're stepping aside for a break. We're coming right back. We've got a spokesperson from Mississippi Power joining us in the next segment. Stay with us.
From theSeabrook.com.
You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert, here on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
A man walks down the street, he says, why am I soft in the middle now? Why am I soft in the middle? The rest of my life is so hard. I need a photo opportunity. I want a shot of redemption. Don't want to end up a cartoon in a cartoon graveyard. Bone digger, dogs in the moonlight. Far away, my well-lit door. Mr. Beer Melly, get these mutts away from me, I don't find this stuff.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth Studio on this day after the big winter storm that pushed through the state of Mississippi. We've got Kaila Moran Griffith, spokesperson for Mississippi Power, joining us now. Hey, Kaila, thanks for coming on.
Hey, Gerard, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
You bet. So give our folks a sense of the footprint that Mississippi Power has that might have been affected by the storm.
Yeah, so Mississippi Power serves customers in southeast Mississippi in 23 counties. So we have been closely monitoring this weather system over the last several days, just like I'm sure you have and a lot of Mississippians have, right?
Yeah.
Yesterday, as that system moved through our area, we had some isolated incidents, but overall our power delivery system held up very well. We had less impacts than we were, prepared for, which is a great thing. We had brought in additional deployed 250 resources, outside resources that included additional line crews and vegetation management. And our crews worked safely yesterday to get the lights on for customers that maybe did lose power for some time yesterday due to high winds. We had some severe weather kind of move through in our coast division, on the east side of our coast division. And so we responded safely to those incidents. This morning, we're looking really good. And at this point now, we know that we're kind of in the clear for our customers, thankfully.
Okay, so does that mean then, Kaila, that no Mississippi Power customers are without power, at least as a result of the storm at this point?
That's correct. We have, like I said, maybe some isolated incidents, but we have moved from our storm mode right into now switching back to that day-to-day business.
Okay.
So very fortunate for our crews that are working safely, that still may be out. We still, you never know the isolated incident that may occur on a normal basis. But
Sure.
As far as storm impacts, we have gotten those customers back on.
So, Kaila, would that then mean that some of your resources, some of your assets can be deployed to help in other areas of the state that are still down?
That's right. So those additional 250 contracted resources that we had secured, we have released those.
Okay.
And so those are up for, to travel if needed. Mississippi Power is a part of what we call the SEE. That's the Southeastern Electric Exchange. And we've been having calls with them regularly to discuss what the need is versus sending a team. So like I said, we've released those contractors so that they may go and assist other utilities if needed. At the time, our latest call, it looks like there's no need for our team to travel. We haven't gotten a request. We always say that we stay flexible in these types of scenarios as far as weather goes. But right now, no request for us. We've released our contractors, and our team now is just operating for our customers here at home.
Okay. What sort of work did you guys do to get ready for this thing? We didn't really know. You saw the forecast, and it looks like for the most part your footprint wasn't expected to bear the brunt of this storm. But, of course, it's very dynamic. It is weather. What were you guys doing to get sort of staged and prepped up for this?
Absolutely. So, we talk a lot and we do a lot of interviews and things during, hurricane season, right? Storm season. But at Mississippi Power, our storm season is year round. The last couple of years, we have seen some really strong winter weather that moved through in the month of January. So, you were just talking with the National Weather Service. We also have our own weather partners that we work with very closely so that we can start monitoring systems like this. We also use things like data analytics to try to pinpoint where we think impacts may be so that we can stage resources ahead of time. So, for example, those extra resources I mentioned, they were staged where we thought we may see more impacts. With storms like this, the ice on lines that we're seeing across really the southeast and certainly in the northern part of the state, that takes down trees and lines. And so that's why we try to secure additional vegetation management so that they can clear limbs off lines for us so that our line crews can get in there safely and work. So a lot of logistics go into planning for something like this. We are always going to be prepared for that worst case scenario, right? Always very happy to report when we have minimal impacts. We do things, even if you think back to like our generation facility, right, where the power starts. We make sure that those units are weatherized, and we actually had some of our generation teams sequestered at our plants in case we did have ice on the roads. We wanted to make sure that our facilities were going to be able to be maintained 24/7, and so that we can meet that higher customer demand, right, that we'll see, because of those freezing temperatures. And so a lot of logistics, a lot of preparation went into place. We start working way ahead of the 24 hours before the storm. We try to prepare as far out as we can. We know that conditions can change really quickly, right? Just like you mentioned, it's dynamic. And so we want to be able to stay flexible and be able to respond quickly, which is what our crews did, right? So they were able to get out when we did have some isolated incidents. They were able to get out quickly and restore those lights and that service for those customers in that moment. But certainly this week we're still going to see some freezing temperatures. So we're still going to operate, as we normally would in winter conditions and respond to our customers, when they need us.
Rhino and I were talking off the air about the contrast between this storm and the big one in '94 that everybody always kind of highlights as as maybe the worst winter storm that hit Mississippi. And Rhino, I think you told us that about 750,000 were without power then across our state, and we're in the 150,000 or so range now. Do you think, Kaila, that's a function of? So I don't think the storm was necessarily any less severe. Is this a function of just a more resilient power grid that we've just learned a lot? The practices are better, and something else that I've noted since then that I don't recall before '94 was that you guys are really active out with vegetation management, as you describe it, trying to prevent these kinds of problems. I don't even remember seeing crews in the middle of the summer out cutting tree limbs down, for example, to kind of prep for that.
Yeah, so I mean, absolutely, we're in a stronger place now than we were, a few decades ago, right? The technology that we have now, like I said, to be able to pinpoint where some of those impacts may be, the investments that we've made in our system alone, over the last 20 plus years. You talk about vegetation management, certainly having that schedule maintained so that we're not just doing it if we think a storm is coming, right? We're maintaining that on a regular schedule because, you'd be surprised at the leading, one of the leading causes of outages is vegetation, right? Sure. Trees coming down. Another thing that we've done is, we're still doing is swapping out wooden poles for concrete ones, right? Because it certainly will take less time to replace a span of wire than it would be to replace an entire pole. Yeah. So concrete's not going to come down as easily as some of the older poles that have been around for a while. So replacing poles in very storm-prone areas or in vulnerable areas that we think could see impacts. So certainly using that technology to our advantage, strengthening our system. We've seen, of course, so many storms in the last 20 years if we go back, and winter storms, hurricanes, tornadoes. So anything that we can do to really increase that reliability and resiliency for our customers, that's something that we're looking at and we continue to work towards every single day.
And also, Kaila, certainly with respect to new construction, and by new I mean in the last 30 years, most of the power is provisioned beneath ground. It's not aerial as far as the lines, the transformers, and all the other infrastructure required to transmit and deliver power. So I know in my neighborhood, for example, I think, and it was built 25 years ago, I think a lot of the problem is the old legacy power lines, poles that dot the landscape, that carry the power from the substations. They're just vulnerable.
Yeah, and so that's, we have a very strategic underground, plan, right, to bring certain areas underground. It depends on the area that you're in, right, because there are pros and cons to both underground and above ground power. Okay. So, bringing it underground when it makes sense, and underground really makes sense when it's in those really hard to reach areas, right, where it may be difficult to get a bucket truck out there. Again, going back to concrete and steel poles, a lot of the transmission we're increasing to steel as well, because if you think about where steel lines are running or where transmission lines are running, it's out in wooded areas, right? It's harder to get to with a bucket truck. So doing things like that to really strengthen that system, to minimize the impacts that we may see because of weather. That's all a part of our grid investment strategy. Yeah. So definitely have come a long way in the last 30 years. And, we're still improving that. We also have a self-healing network. That's something that we've, now have more than 96% of our customers are on our self-healing network. That means that if you experience an outage, it's going to isolate that outage and minimize it. So if you think of a blink going in and out, that's that self-healing network.
Finds another route.
Or even rolling a truck.
Yep.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly.
Kaila, appreciate you joining us with an update. Kaila Moran Griffith, spokesperson, Mississippi Power. Appreciate that, and give our gratitude to all the folks at your company that help keep the lights on. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. Y'all stay safe.
We're coming right back, folks, in the Element Wealth studio. Don't forget, we got Commissioner Sean Tindell in the Element Wealth studio at 11:05.
Hello, friends and neighbors.
You're listening to Middays with Gerard here on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth Studio. We certainly appreciate those updates from the National Weather Service and Mississippi Power as well. We're pleased to advise that Commissioner Sean Tindell is actually going to join us in the studio here at 11:05. And as Rhino knows, this building is largely empty except for me, you, and Scary Gary, I think, right? So,
essential personnel only.
That would be us. No, fortunately, no problems driving here in central Mississippi. And I certainly understand that this company, Mississippi Farm Bureau, would, in an abundance of caution, shut down, as are all the schools and a lot of other stuff in the area. And, of course, not nearly as bad where we are in central Mississippi. The Tippah County, I'm really worried about when you see the Electric Power Association, the electricity providers say weeks. That's a problem, man. That's very concerning. You and I were looking at it. Tippah County has a population up in our northeast corner there of about 21,000 in the entire county. And you were looking at the data with respect to customers of the power company and those without power, right? Tell us about that.
The power outage map I'm looking at is tracking about 1.5 million Mississippians, so it doesn't have the entire state, but usually what it's leaving out are municipality-led power units. But for Tippah County, they're tracking 12,519 households.
Okay. Man.
The number of customers out in Tippah County is 12,325.
Man.
Which is 98.45% of the entire county is without power.
And we should also point out, now if you're listening to us on the air, you can't hear us in some places because the weather did have an impact on many of our stations. Our lead engineer, Houston McDavid, all over that over the weekend. Such is the life, Rhino, as you know, of an engineer that's responsible for not only supporting all of our digital and IT systems that make all this happen, but, of course, the on-air infrastructure as well that delivers our shows, our network, to the public. And he has been really good about providing us updates yesterday, a couple, I believe, and then this morning as well. And so there are number of stations. So those of you that are able to pick us up, please let folks know they can still get us on our app, provided you have Internet access, assuming you do with your mobile device.
That's what was so weird when my power blinked that one time, was it blinked enough to turn my monitor and my TV off.
Okay.
My laptop, being a laptop, just went to charge instead of being on the cord.
Yeah.
But my router never lost power and never lost connection.
That's weird.
It blinked that quickly.
Yeah, so you know that sometimes the circuitry inside those devices can sort of survive a small interruption. This is why a lot of times when you need to recycle your devices, to reset them if there's a glitch, you're instructed to unplug them and let them sit for a while because all the capacitors and stuff, I can't get too deep into the electronic weeds here, but in general, they keep on going even though you physically unplug them from line power. I remember the old, they're called SWIMs. I don't remember what it stands for, but it's essentially the power supply for a DirecTV satellite dish. You can unplug those dudes, and I'm telling you that green light will stay lit for about a minute before it finally goes dark. And so you're not really effectively recycling it, a cold boot, as we would call it, until it goes dark. But just looking at Houston McDavid, our engineer's latest report, for where we are right here, WFMN, he says 50% power out. Now, the way I understand it is that means our coverage area is more limited. Is that right, Rhino? Or does our coverage area stay the same, but maybe the quality suffers a bit? Which is it?
Well, with the way power and a radio tower works, is the tower is powered, and the amount of power determines the distance you can receive the broadcast from.
Okay. So we may have some people that perhaps are on the edge of those boundaries of the coverage footprint, if you will, the off-air footprint of those towers that are unable to tune in. I've had a couple of people text me about that, and I've advised them to hop on the app and catch us. That's the cool thing about that. So, but our Corinth and Greenwood studios have no electricity. That's an issue. Our Oxford studio, he noted the power was back on, so the streaming from that studio is back on. But I think our friend Richard in Oxford, right, without power.
Yeah, there's still a shelter in place in Oxford as of 45 minutes ago was the last I checked.
Yeah, shelter in place. I mean, that
and there were reports all throughout the day of live lines down across roads with people driving over them. So you don't want to be out and about with still power running through lines that are down.
Yeah, that's a problem. So shelter in place. So, man, hopefully those folks stocked up, I should say, on stuff, and it's not going to be that bad for them. They can continue to function inside their homes, but we wish you the best. We pray for you, and hopefully they're first responders that are helping. Coming right back with the Commissioner. Stay with us.
Your hour of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by the Mississippi Business Journal. Visit msbusinessjournal.com. Scott Coopwood, publisher and president.
Welcome to the show that challenges you to think deeply and look beyond political posturing. You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth Studio. It's hour 2 of the program. Don't forget, this is Monday. That means we have a short show. Ricky Matthews, SuperTalk Outdoors, joins you at 12:05. We've been talking about the weather this morning across the state of Mississippi. That's the big news right now. It's Commissioner Sean Tindell from the Department of Public Safety. Commissioner, thanks for coming in.
Glad to be here on this frigid Monday morning.
Yes, it is. Of course, I'm sure you noticed that the parking lot is empty, and so is the building. Mississippi Farm Bureau, of course, out of abundance of caution, just shut the place down. And, in fact, here at SuperTalk, it's just Rhino and Scary Gary and me, and now you. We appreciate you coming in the studio. Give us an update on what the Mississippi State Troopers, the Highway Patrol, Department of Public Safety has been doing to assist our fellow Mississippians with this weather.
You know, it's pretty much been all hands on deck from the Department of Public Safety standpoint, at least on our first responder side, our law enforcement divisions. And so we have been very busy. Obviously, northern Mississippi is seeing a little bit of a different scenario play out compared to what we have in central Mississippi and South Mississippi. There was some unknowns, so kind of like Farm Bureau, I think we took some precaution on our non-essential employees and gave them an opportunity to come in late or didn't open at all. But for those first responders, they've definitely been busy, especially, again, up in the north part of the state, battling the conditions. And I've got some numbers.
Yeah.
Over the weekend, we worked 77 crashes. We assisted with 141 stranded motorists. And answered 194 various calls from across the state in response. And I'll say it's Highway Patrol, our Commercial Transportation Enforcement Division's been out there. We coordinated with Highway Patrol so the Capitol Police could cover the interstates and the CCID so that could free up our troopers to work in the outlying areas more. And so NBN and our MBI, everybody's kind of been all hands on deck, ready to answer calls as the case may be. So it's definitely when you see what's happening in North Mississippi and then looking at the conditions that we can expect at least up there for another week. It's pretty eye-opening, dangerous, and trying to encourage people to stay home. I was talking to somebody today. For some reason, they decided to go to Oxford over the weekend.
Oh my God!
Then they were concerned about getting back home.
Well, they have a shelter-in-place order in the town.
Go to Oxford?
Oh
but,
my God!
Okay, that's what you deal with sometimes, and so. But to our first responders, I want to give them my greatest appreciation. I mean, they're out there bearing the elements, helping people, doing the best they can, and even when we talk about our frontline workers, my grandfather was a retired lineman for Mississippi Power, and I remember when we had a hurricane or we had a hard freeze like this. Our street was the first one to get the power on, but he was gone for the next week or two trying to get everybody else's power back on. Yeah. So they're out there on the front lines doing it as well, and we want to pray for them and make sure that they're getting what they need.
So you talked about, of course, the normal routine responsibilities of handling crashes, but something you typically don't have to deal with as far as the Highway Patrol state troopers are concerned, stranded motorists. What else is your department doing to assist Mississippians with this weather issue?
Well, I can tell you I got a call from the Carroll County emergency management team up there. They're needing additional supplies, generators, water, blankets, for their jail because they've lost power. And then, they do have a number of citizens. I think the entire county was without power. So we're getting resources to them. So when we hear from other local officials, sheriffs, emergency management operators, and they need help, then we can coordinate with our resources in another part of the state to kind of get them the resources they need to keep going and keep people safe.
So you may already be aware, but I've had several folks send me messages from Tippah County where the Electric Power Association there says it could be, quote, weeks. That was their official statement before the power is restored. Is there any, it's not an easy task. Of course, anything that your department, state government, MEMA, the good folks over there, Steve McRaney, that can do to maybe speed that up?
Well, we'll certainly do our best, and obviously with the Department of Public Safety, the only thing that we can really try to do is support those frontline workers that'll be trying to get that power grid up and going, and much like we do after a hurricane, try to make sure we get them where they need to get, and if they have any trouble getting there, that we get them on through. Okay. But, and I will be, and I'm sure other state leaders, Governor Reeves is going to be in contact with officials with them, trying to get that power switch back on sooner rather than later. Because, again, I was looking at the weather report for that area, and I think in Corinth, they're expecting freezing temperatures all the way through February 9th, which is about as far as my phone would go out. So it's a cold spell. It's sticking around, and if those folks don't have power any sooner than that, there's going to be some real issues with their ability to survive in that environment.
No doubt about it. We just had National Weather Service on in the first hour, and what they indicated was right. The temperatures are staying low. About the only chance we have of some melting is just due to sun and sunlight, which it is expected to peak out and stay out for a few days across Mississippi. So maybe that'll contribute to some of the melting, but not the way it would if the temperature rose above freezing. Folks can't stay in their houses for weeks like that without power with these frigid temperatures.
Well, that's right. And then also you've got the businesses and the gas stations.
Schools.
And I mean, because if you don't have power, it's kind of hard to operate that gas station to keep the trucks full and food. And so there's a whole host of issues that go along with it if they have a broad power outage like that. That creates, much like what we saw in Katrina, where, you had for the only time I've seen in my life after Katrina, it was this thought of martial law and what that meant for people to kind of have to fend for themselves a bit. And so we're going to be doing everything we can to get all our resources together to help, and working with the governor any way we can if he's got a request for us to put assets there. And the great thing with the Highway Patrol in our state police that we have at the Department of Public Safety is our ability to pull resources from all over the state to lend a hand.
Yeah.
We're not just limited to the Northeast. I mean, we've got folks on the coast on our special operations group that are ready to pick up and move at any point and offer assistance. Now, typically, what we're used to responding to is hurricanes. So it's a little bit of a different scenario when you're trying to go into a cold weather situation. But we're there. We're ready. And look, again, I got to give kudos to first responders. I was leaving my house this morning Gulfport heading up and came across a wreck on the Calvin Lorraine Road Bridge, and stopped to help two people that had been in an accident. And I don't know if ice played a factor there or not, but they sat out there with them, and Gulfport PD showed up. Josh Myers, one of the Gulfport police officers, was there on the scene and ready to help these two people and move traffic. And, there it was 25 degrees, and they're out there in the elements trying to help people. So it's one of the beautiful things about law enforcement and the profession, and you really see individuals that have a true servant heart trying to get out there and help their brothers.
Well, they're trained, and they know when they sign up for it, they deal with a whole lot of things, honestly, they hope never happens.
That's right.
But are just inevitable in our world, and we're very much appreciative of them. And now, is this a situation, Commissioner, where it's sort of all hands on deck, that you've got maximum resources, human resources deployed?
We do when it comes to the law enforcement divisions. I will say at our driver services, we shut down the northern part of the state. We had late openings in the southern part, and the central part will be back open full service tomorrow. Yeah. But again, that was just looking at it from our folks that aren't first responders, trying to make sure they don't cause more problems trying to get to work and slipping and sliding all over the roads. And I think much the same approach that Farm Bureau had. But as soon as they get back, we'll pull resources from wherever we have to make sure we can get it where it needs to be.
Okay. So one thing we can be grateful for is that we were just talking about this with the National Weather Service. The technology has improved to facilitate interoperability. This was a big problem that we learned during Katrina, that we had a long way to go. And I just recall some of those first responders with a dozen or so communications devices on their belts to try to keep up with everything from the various organizations. That's changed quite a bit for the better.
It has. Of course, we have the MISWIN system, which is our wireless communication network that's operated by the state of Mississippi, and I think 80 out of 82 counties are on that system. Okay. And so it certainly helps with a communication standpoint when state law enforcement, local law enforcement, federal law enforcement can all communicate. And that's improved in just technology in general when you think about cell phones and even after what we saw in the Carolinas last year and Elon Musk opening up his satellite system for folks to communicate. If I don't have a cell signal, I step outside and it says I can text whoever I want using his satellite.
Yeah,
so
it's pretty cool.
Pretty great advancement when we think about the technology aspect and how it impacts disasters.
We're up against a break, but I know you got some information to share with us about an update in general, right, from the department. So stick around after this break. We've got Commissioner Sean Tindell from the Mississippi Department of Public Safety in the Element Wealth studio. We're coming right back.
I'm gonna make time, oh Lord. Gonna get by with my friend. Middays with Gerard Gibert. Let's do this. On SuperTalk, Mississippi. Let's go.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth studio. We're visiting with the Department of Public Safety Commissioner Sean Tindell. So, Commissioner, first, once again, our gratitude to first responders, to the men and women of the Mississippi Highway Patrol, the state troopers that are doing everything they can to assist Mississippians get through this terrible weather that moved through our area, leaving many motorists stranded, as you indicated. Tell the folks again how many stranded motorists were responded to?
It was pull it back up. I can tell you that I just got a note from the Lieutenant Colonel that we've also been assisting in Bolivar County. We've got 4 troopers and 4 CTED officers there at the shelter providing security. Okay. Been there since they were requested, and we'll stay till the end. We've had 141 stranded motorists. Wow. And 77 crashes that they've been dealing with, ice and on the road getting off, and so out there on the front lines doing what they do, and it really is. Extremely impressive when I think about, again, first responders, and that's why they call them that, right? They're the first ones to get there, and they leave their families to go and help others. And, it's one of the things that I've on big list on my agenda this year is trying to get them pay raises, to get them up to a level of our neighboring states and even jurisdictions within the state to make sure that they're getting paid a salary that's commensurate with the risk that they're taking. And so we're working in the legislature to try to get that done. Also working with Representative Zach Grady to do a supplemental pay for all law enforcement. You look at Louisiana, the state of Louisiana pays $700 a month to each law enforcement officer in that state above what the local jurisdictions pay. So, pretty significant number. That helps supplement the pay of law enforcement. And that's one of the things I saw across the state, is in some areas, our smaller, poorer counties, just the struggles that they have trying to keep and retain law enforcement officers with the budget they have. And it's often said that it shouldn't matter what your zip code is, your child should get a quality education. And if you're a victim of a crime, you're entitled to justice and a good investigation. And we need to make sure, whether you're in a big city or a small city, that we're paying law enforcement officers they can get the job done. In order to do that, maybe the supplemental pay program that Representative Zach Grady and myself and others are working on can come to fruition to try to help those folks. So, we're working on that. Had our budget hearings last week at the state capitol. Really proud of putting up some of the numbers that we've seen. Homicides in Mississippi in 2021 reached a high of over 600. We're down to about 400 last year, which is a great number. Teenage fatalities are down in Mississippi. We've been promoting driver's education extensively. There's a new law that goes into effect that will require driver's education in 2027 be taken and passed by every new driver in the state. So I think we're starting to see the fruition of some of those pushes, showing some real data that we're getting improvements there. Highway Patrol's been out doing its job. CTED's been out doing its job. We've seen a reduction in fatalities on our roadways with big rigs, as well as just overall. And I think a lot of that has to do with the clicking and ticket initiatives and the speed reduction initiatives that Highway Patrol and our other divisions have been doing. And so really proud of the positive trends that we're seeing on the public safety front. And again, I think it's indicative of the good work that they're doing. We've had 6 consecutive patrol schools under Governor Reeves' administration. That has not been done since Governor Fordyce was in office, that we had consecutive patrol schools. So we're doing that. We're having another one coming up in February. We've got 98 cadets that are scheduled to start. And they'll come out and they'll be working at all our divisions. We'll have troopers at CTED, we'll have troopers at MBM, we'll have troopers at Capitol Police, and of course troopers on the Mississippi Highway Patrol. So, I'm trying to bring that level of professionalism that we see and expect with our Highway Patrol to all our divisions, and I think it's a positive move towards the future. But I'm proud of what we're producing, and hopefully those positive public safety trends will continue in the direction that we want them to.
What about this tier 5 in PERS? I know that's been a very controversial and hot topic, especially within the first responder community. The main issue there, of course, is the requirement that an employee must serve 35 years to retire at any age, and instead of the old 30 found in the tier 4. And there's been a lot of discussion about that in the Capitol. Where do we stand on that now from your perspective?
Well, there's a number of bills making their way through, and I've had some extensive discussion with the Senate leadership and members of the House, and Senator Sparks, I know, is somebody that's passionate about the PERS, and I'll say this about him. He sees the problems that the retirement system has, and we've got to do something to talk about fixes. But I've also had good conversations with him, and I think he understands that the first responder community and what they do is a little more of a different job than any other job. You know, when I took this responsibility on as commissioner in 2020, I'd been around public safety. I'd worked as a prosecutor. I'd worked with law enforcement. But until you're in the midst of it, it's really hard to appreciate the sacrifice, the mental toll, the dangers that they take. And, every year now I go to the memorial service for our fallen first responders. And there's a reason why there's a wall nestled between the Supreme Court and the state capitol that has the names of fallen first responders. And every year we lose, in the line of duty, 4 to 5 officers a year. And you don't see that with other professions in state government. And so I think it shows you the risk that they're taking, the toll that it takes both mentally and physically. And the reality is that they deserve a little bit of a different retirement requirement, and so hopefully we'll see some movement on that. There's different ideas, and I'm a big advocate for trying to support them any way we can. Now, again, I know we got to be fiscal responsible, and I know there's a cost to it, and it's what cost is the legislature or even local governments willing to accept for providing that to our first responders. So hopefully we'll be having those conversations and we'll see some movement there. And look, one of the other realities that I know is if for some reason that doesn't come to fruition, if you're not paying a good retirement, the only other way that you're going to retain these good officers is to really increase the salaries to a much higher level than what we see now. So either way, there's going to be a cost that has to be analyzed by state and local officials for having good law enforcement.
How do we compare from a compensation perspective to our neighboring states?
I think, and this is information given to me by the police chiefs and others, that our neighboring states have better retirement systems. I think they're on a 30 or 25 year. You go down to Florida, and my understanding is that they're very profession specific in Florida. The teachers have a retirement. First responders have a retirement. Judges have their own retirement. They all have different retirements because if you think about it, they have different needs. I mean, I think, there are judges that work well into their 80s. You really don't see a lot of 82-year-old law enforcement officers.
Not sure you'd want them. I don't know that they could perform the duty.
That's right. And so, I think those considerations have to be given. And again, there is a cost of public safety. And I have a saying that I try to, when I'm talking to politicians, I emphasize that politics is best left out of public safety, but good public safety is always good politics. And again, I was in Cleveland, Mississippi. Starting salary for a law enforcement officer in Cleveland, Mississippi, in the heart of the Delta, was $61,000 a year. $61,000. They got 47 full-time officers in a city of about 12,000 people. You know what they haven't had in Cleveland, Mississippi? In 18 months? A murder. They've got good law enforcement. They got a lot of law enforcement, and they've got a safe community. So business is thriving, schools are thriving, communities are thriving. And when you start with those public safety initiatives, I think what's going to follow is better schools, more economic development, 100%. In neighborhoods where people want to live. And there is a cost to that. And I believe that it's good government to support good public safety.
Just their mere presence is a deterrent. Just the presence.
That's right. Well, look, let's talk about Jackson and Capitol Police. And,
I was about to ask you.
What we've been able to accomplish there. They had a record number low of homicides. I say record. It hasn't been that low in almost 10 years.
Yeah.
Now, I don't think it's just Capitol Police. I think Jackson Police Department has been reinvigorated, working hand in hand with Capitol Police and the Hinds County Sheriff's Office, and law enforcement officers for the first time in a while have a sense that they can get out there and do their job in the city of Jackson. And the politics are somewhat going to be taken out of it. But the collective of all those law enforcement officers out in the communities, out on the street, I think is a major reason why you're seeing a reduction in that. And there's other factors. I mean, hopefully we're getting into schools. We're talking to young people. We're trying to change lives in different ways early on. But the presence of law enforcement absolutely matters.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And I've seen a remarkable turnaround, I would say, in the Capitol complex, and especially with the expansion of the CCID. People talk about that, just how they just feel safer because they see this presence, and it's such a strong deterrent.
They do. And look, we've tried to get out in the community. We're putting out a newsletter for Capitol Police that goes out to the community. Anybody can sign up for it through our website. We're also doing podcasts, trying to make sure that our 1,600 employees have a good idea of what's happening internally in the agency. And if everybody wants to step on and watch and hear what the people that are actually leading the Department of Public Safety have to say about public safety, it's a great opportunity to listen to them.
Well, we appreciate them. We appreciate the men and women that serve in the Mississippi Highway Patrol, the Department of Public Safety, and especially with this winter weather, their outsized efforts are important to help our fellow Mississippians. Commissioner Sean Tindell with the Department of Public Safety has been our guest. Appreciate you coming in, Commissioner.
Thank you. Appreciate y'all.
You bet.
Stay safe.
We're coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
From the Seabrook.com.
Bring it on! Middays with Gerard Gibert.
It is on!
On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Well studio. Of course, we've been concentrating on the weather that affected the great state of Mississippi over the weekend. But besides the weather, of course, and of course, we thank so much the National Weather Service, spokesperson for Kaila from Mississippi Power, and Commissioner of Public Safety Sean Tindell for joining us today on this important Monday after a wintry weather weekend. These photos, Rhino, and videos of some of the areas in North Mississippi, especially around Oxford, photos of the square, like it does look like a war zone, honestly. I've seen a couple of photos with power poles just straddled across the road there, the street in the square. It's just surreal to see that. Big old problem.
I need to send you the live stream I was watching yesterday while all this was going down. It was one of the storm chasers, and instead of chasing tornadoes, he was on the road live streaming all the different ice everywhere. And it's about 9 hours. There's points where he has to pull over and just kind of sit there for a bit and figure out which way he's going to go to get to his next location. But, yeah, he's driving through places that it's really hard to tell where the road is. There's so much ice.
Man, that's incredible.
And you can tell he's just kind of fishtailing back and forth and just keeping it on the road because he's got experience. But, yeah, it was squirrely even for him.
Well, it certainly exposes a lot, and it also illustrates that these people that serve in these first responder roles, from the electric utility linemen, and there's lots of folks, as you know, Rhino, that have to handle the substations, the back office. There's a long list of assets that are all interconnected to deliver electricity to your house. They're all working overtime as well. We appreciate them. And, of course, the state troopers, they don't typically get up every day, as the commissioner was telling us, and have to go respond to stranded motorists. That's an unusual call in the state of Mississippi for sure. So,
especially to have 141 of them.
Jeez, that's incredible. So we appreciate them as well. So, Tippah County, I'm still worried about, guys. I feel helpless. I don't know what to do. They need power. At a minimum, we've got to get these folks. If it's going to be weeks with this frigid weather, they need warmth. They need shelter. They need food. They need the necessities of life. And hopefully there's a plan being put together. And it's not just, I'm not just focused on Tippah County, other than the fact that I haven't seen any other area of the state predict that it will be and issue a statement that it will be weeks before the power's restored. I haven't seen that.
Well, the good news for Tippah County is overnight lows are below freezing.
Okay.
And the high today is still below freezing. The high today in Tippah County is 22 degrees.
Jeez.
Tomorrow, the high is 36.
Okay.
So during the day, there should be some melting. Wednesday, the high is 42. Thursday, the high is 46.
Yeah.
So by the end of the week, there should be significant melt of the ice, which should speed things up a bit. But we were talking off the air, because it's so rural, because you have the distance between the station and the consumer, and if you have icing like they've seen where it snaps poles, resetting a pole is not something you can just snap your fingers and get it done. It takes hours of man-hours to get it done. So if you've got a whole string of them, you're looking at a week or two just to get all the poles reset in that direction.
Unbelievable. And that, I'm quite sure likely that's what's going on in Tippah County, where they are projecting that it will be weeks. The Tippah County Electric Power Association is that it will be weeks until the power is restored in some areas. Rhino sent me a video showing drivers in Mississippi. Yeah, that's storm chasers. Yeah, that's kind of scary. That seems to me like you ought to stay off the roads in cases like that.
I would share it on our live stream, but the very first words that come out of his mouth on the live stream are curse words, because the second he hit start on the stream, Apparently, he was sitting in Oxford, and a tree collapsed right next to his vehicle the second he pressed go on the stream. So he let out a few choice words that we can't play on the air.
Man, oh man! So you remember President Biden, certainly on the campaign trail. This is an incident we've referenced before, where he's having a conversation with an individual who's disabled in a wheelchair and cannot speak, but has some technology that allows a speaker to project text-to-speech, right? Technology and a speaker that projects it. And he's having this conversation. Is Biden the candidate with him? And this guy that's disabled just insists that we've got to shut down the fossil fuels industry. And remember, he asked the question, and I don't think Biden actually understood it. Not unusual for him. But he finally said, oh, yeah, we're going to shut it down. I'm telling you, we're going to kill the fossil fuels industry. Well, today there's an article in the Wall Street Journal published by the editorial board entitled, "Thank Heaven for Coal Power in the Cold." So it turns out this coal power stuff works pretty good when it's cold. It's very resilient. The North American Electric Reliability Corp, they warned in November, looking at long-term forecasts, that, quote, extreme winter conditions over a wide area could result in electricity supply shortfalls. And that's exactly what's happened, especially in the Northeast and the Midwest. Most people get their heat from natural gas. Less fuel was available for power plants, but utilities on Saturday directed customers to lower thermostats, unplug non-essential appliances, and reduce their temperature settings on their water heaters. But it turns out that the climate nuts that claimed that solar, wind, and batteries could replace fossil fuels were wrong. Of course, anybody with half a brain and was clear-eyed knew that, but it turns out that coal to the rescue here. So imagine if Biden tried to achieve the shutdown that he promised to this individual. And it wasn't just that. He said it multiple times, pandering to the climate nuts in this country. So thank God for coal power from the Wall Street Journal. Fascinating. The other big news, of course, over the weekend is this shooting by federal agents of an individual in Minneapolis that died at the hands of those gunshots. I think some 10 shots were fired at that individual. And it's a sad day in America that our cities are ripped apart like this. And I hesitate to offer an opinion as to whether or not ICE was overstepping. There are so many facts and so many issues surrounding this case. One thing I'm seeing is that this is dividing folks on the right. The other thing that I find interesting is that
it's mainly dividing folks on the right because Kristi Noem is a bit of an idiot.
I watched that live yesterday morning. I felt like she completely misrepresented what happened and the individual himself, and describing him as a terrorist. I don't think I'd quite describe him as that.
The part that rubbed me the wrong way with her speech and her statements was that he obviously planned to massacre ICE agents because he had a concealed carry pistol and 2 extra magazines.
Completely wrong. I think that's gross exaggeration at a minimum. So one thing I do find...
I have an extra magazine in my pocket right now. Does that mean I'm planning on massacring somebody?
No. And that's silly and that's stupid. But one thing that I do find rather fascinating is how all of a sudden the Democrats, the liberals in this country, have had an epiphany with respect to Second Amendment rights. So that's a little interesting, is it not? Because I thought these were the people that want to completely get rid of all guns. Now all of a sudden they're defending this man who did show up at a protest armed and did interfere and obstruct ICE agents. There's no question about that. The question is, were they in the right for essentially killing him there to do their duty? That, I think, is the question. I believe we should have a thorough investigation with all the evidence immediately. And it looks like there's been some effort, if I'm not mistaken, on the part of the federal government to block or withhold or not give access to, I think that's the thing, to local investigators of this evidence. No, it needs to be totally transparent in my view. We need all the data, all the facts, all the video. People that were around as well should be interviewed. Let's get to the bottom of this and look at these. If these guys broke the law, then they should suffer the consequences. It's simple as that. If they didn't, well, then they should be acquitted if they're charged. We're coming right back with the final segment.
Poly up a Mississippi.
Are we going to do this?
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Keep rolling. 3, 2, 1.
On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
That's for you, Gary in the Berg. A little Hush by Deep Purple from the all-hit request line. So, all right, Rhino, I misspoke because Caleb Sailors from our news department said, hey, we're here. Okay, I just went by the email that went out from our president. That
they've been here the whole weekend.
Okay, I didn't know that. And we appreciate them. So I didn't mean to overlook them and leave them out. I didn't go that far back in the building. So, but we do appreciate them being here and keeping Mississippians informed. And again, folks, tell people if they're saying, hey, I can't pick up SuperTalk, just let them know you can get us on the app. That's still churning out. Also, on the C Spire text line, Ben from Madison points out you can add Kash Patel to that list as well. You were not too impressed with Secretary Noem and her press conference yesterday. I caught that.
Her entire tenure seems like it's photo shoot followed by photo shoot followed by photo shoot followed by photo shoot when it's being sold as press conference, press conference, press conference, press conference.
I agree. And I watched it live yesterday. And I got to tell you, Ben.
And he's right. Kash Patel is right up there in the realms of just showing his ignorance in public.
I watched that one live as well. That was that yesterday, Ben? He was on. Was it with Maria Bartiromo? I'm not sure. One of those Sunday shows that I watch on a regular basis. But one of them had Kash Patel on for a prolonged interview. I heard the exact same thing, Ben. He was really sounded like almost making excuses and justifying it. I still say we need to collect all the data and do a thorough investigation. You know, in our country, you're innocent until proven guilty.
Well, it is one of the few things Kash actually got right in his statements was that you've had several Democrat states and municipalities that have put it on their books that it is against the law to show up to a protest with a firearm. Those laws were put on the books to stop conservatives from showing up to intimidate protesters with their firearms because historically, conservatives have been the pro-Second Amendment party.
You're right.
So if you have counter-protesters showing up to a quote-unquote peaceful protest with firearms, you're intimidating the people and you're quelling their ability to express their First Amendment right. So the Democrat-led areas have made that illegal.
So I did do a little research on that yesterday as well, and this is where it gets a little complicated between federal law and the Second Amendment and then state laws that can enact restrictions with respect to carrying firearms in spaces where they can be carried that don't conflict with the Second Amendment. I mean, this is a constant question in our society. Well, in Minnesota, best I could tell in researching that law, you can, in fact, carry a firearm to a protest. But anytime you're carrying a firearm, you got to have an ID on you. That's what the Minnesota law says. So it appears that this individual did not have an ID from all reports, right? An ID. Now, does that justify the killing of him by federal agents? No, it doesn't. I'm just clarifying that those that say, well, you shouldn't have gone to the protest with a firearm, it's perfectly legal in Minnesota, a deep blue state, as it turns out. You just got to have an ID. I don't know what the law is in Mississippi. I suspect, I haven't looked at that, you got to have an ID as well. I mean, it makes sense to me to prove who you are when you're carrying. Hey, we need to make sure. Is that true or not? I don't know.
I think in Mississippi it's just constitutional carry.
Okay. So in Minnesota, you just got to have an ID. It's kind of weird to me that this individual, an ICU nurse, didn't have an ID on him. I mean, maybe.
Well, that's a part of the training in the organization from Antifa.
Okay. So that's a problem. Now.
And that will also, if we live in a just world, all of the people that have been caught up and have been exposed now with their organization of these activities to hunt down, follow, harass ICE agents, it appears they've broken several laws, and if somebody dies in the commission of their conspiracy, they are all liable for his murder.
Absolutely true. You have the right to protest. You don't have the right to obstruct law enforcement. And I think you could argue that there was some obstruction going on here. Again, that doesn't warrant or justify the end result of being filled with bullets by federal agents. But I still think we got a lot more investigation to do before we jump to any conclusions here. You know, I say that this all goes back to, and again, this doesn't justify it, but Joe Biden just flung the doors wide open. And our cities and streets are filled with more illegals than we know about or can count. And the president ran on the idea, on the commitment that he would deport. He would find these people, these illegals. In this case, they were looking for one who committed crime. So lots of extenuating circumstances. I will say this. You can support, this is another situation where it's nuanced. You can support law enforcement, but also be against abuse of your power as a law enforcement officer. And I think that's what's going on here. More to come on that for sure. Folks, stay safe out there, and God bless.
A SuperTalk Mississippi media production.